Good afternoon. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites 2019 Advisory Review Panel, Individuals, Number 1. I'm Ann Valentine, Commissioner from Carmel. Today is November 7th, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome applicants who may be listening in today and would like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. We'll start with Maurice. I can't hear. Is Maurice on mute?
There, I'm now unmuted. My name is Maurice Broadus. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, as well as a middle grade teacher. I am in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Bethany?
Hi, I'm Bethany Rockovic. I'm the coordinator for Education and National History Day in Indiana at the Indiana Historical Society, and I am in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Darren?
Hi, I'm Darren Redmond from Brown County. I'm a textile artist, and I have received grants from the Indiana Arts Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
My name is Aaron Stump. I'm the Habitat Programs Coordinator with the Indiana Wildlife Federation, based out of Indianapolis, and I do all of our public outreach and education.
Thank you. Aiko?
Hi, I'm Aiko Coker, and I'm an artist and dancer out of Bloomington, Indiana.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Van Soest. I am a fiber artist from DeMotte, Indiana.
Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Chagaster, Artist and Community Services Manager at the Indiana Arts Commission.
Thank you. Now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read them. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader is finished, I will open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application is reviewed. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. Those scores are saved automatically. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, let's begin. We'll start with the application from Anita Westhues. The first reader is Bethany. Thank you, Beth. Go ahead, Bethany.
Of course, thank you. What I really liked about this application was that there was such a strong case for the significance of this project in relation to the park. I really enjoyed how that connection was conveyed through the application. I also really enjoyed how the artist is focusing on the rural tradition and how it is interpreted. And I feel that this program will naturally foster conversation about that. And I really enjoyed the sharing potential through World Listening Day. However, where I felt like the application could be a little bit stronger, I think it could be greatly helped by more clearly defining the audience. Through the application, there were several different audiences identified. There were families with young children, families with older children, retired couples, master naturalists. All of these different audiences have very different needs as far as a program is concerned. And so especially, I noticed that one of the aspects of the program is a 45-minute lecture. Young children, that's not necessarily the best format for them, but it would be perfect for some of the other audiences. And so I feel as though a more clearly defined audience would help work out the layout of the program as far as how that is actually going to run. And so there were a lot of details on the first program, but not as many on the other two. And so I feel like defining that audience will help that come together, which will then also help the marketing plan come together. Without a clear audience, you really don't know how to best reach that audience. And so defining that audience will help better that marketing plan and help make the program, the layout of the program better overall.
Thank you, Bethany. And now our second reader, Aaron.
So the first thing that struck me was in terms of public benefit. So as someone who does a lot of outdoor education, I think active listening is very underutilized. And I really appreciate that this person has a different approach to an art project. So that stood out to me. And as my only critique, I had a couple of similar ones in terms of identifying the audience, but in terms of evaluating the success of the program, it's mentioned that they'll be tracked through, or there'll be a outreach through social media platforms and things like that. I always find it helpful to have, for social media especially, how many followers does the page have, how many views does it get, what kind of outreach are we actually looking at? Other than that, I had a lot of the same comments.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the rest of the panel?
I would like to add something to it. Since this is more of a listening experience, one of the things that concerned me was she was going to record items or have people record them and then listen to them later in a shelter. I was just wondering if it was like an enclosed shelter or a open shelter, how the sound would travel with that. Because if it's only on these small recording devices, it'll be difficult if she does pull in 20 people, and it'll be hard for everybody to hear if you're listening nature sounds or outdoor sounds, it'll be difficult to hear. So that was one of the, if she had speakers or something to be able to help with the sound issue.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. We'll now move to the application from Catherine Mowry. The first reader is Maurice.
All right, give me one moment. Let's see. Catherine. Yes, so with Catherine Mowry's, I didn't have a whole lot to say about this one. It was pretty obvious that she met a lot of the criteria for, especially in terms of feasibility, and I think my only, as I'm quickly scanning, the only thing, I only had a couple of notes basically. So I had down that the artist could tie the park and together more with the project via the stories about its role in history and the culture. It touched upon that briefly, I think, but I just could use some more, this actually just better defined in terms of a concrete way that the roles were, the stories are going to be told in relation to the park. And then also, it seemed like there was this project could benefit from more of a defined reflection time built into the activities, just to allow the participants the space to consider what they've experienced. And then also there should be, one of the things I was concerned about was also the specificity of the marketing plan, which will probably be a recurring comment of mine, in that it just seemed, it seemed pretty scattershot in terms of, or not really scattershot, but just general in terms of how they're going to go about doing the marketing. And then, and then lastly, I want to see, after the activity's done, one of the things I thought would be helpful would be some sort of archive online so that the final products and stories would be available for a greater population to view and interact with.
Thank you, Maurice. Our second reader, Darren.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I agree with Maurice about the marketing plan. They're intending to post their classes for the to the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma newsletter, and they're going to post it on Facebook and work with the staff. I would hope that they could post or market this activity to a greater audience. It just sounded like it was a narrow marketing plan right there. And then some other comments I have is I would like to see a more detailed budget, how much the supplies cost and what are the supplies for this project. And those are the only comments that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the rest of the panel? Okay, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Next, we will move to the application from Charity Craig. We do have a panel member with a conflict of interest who will be placed on hold while that application is reviewed. So Maurice will be placed on hold. I'll move to our first reader. Aiko, please.
Charity, she'll be conducting a writing workshop and creating a field guide about Prophetstown State Park. And I think it's nice that the people who will attend the workshop, they'll receive the copies of this field guide and use it during the workshop as an example of her writing exercises. And also some of the field guides will be donated to the park so that they can sell it. So I thought that was nice. All in all, I felt that she had provided good detail and description and showed proof within her attached documentation that she'll be able to successfully complete the project. And she seems like she's already reached out to the park staff and built up a nice relationship with them. I guess one of my questions for the applicant would be that if any of the history of Prophetstown will be included in the field guide. The park is the newest state park and it doesn't have as much of the rich history as other state parks, so it'd be nice to see if she's adding that into the field guide. Also, a minor note, her math is just a little bit off on her expenses, so it adds up to an extra $5 in her budget. But in general, I think she provided a strong proposal and shown that she'll be able to complete the project as she described.
Thank you, Aiko. Our second reader, Mary Ann.
Yes, I agree with Charity that it was a strong application, interesting, and would work well in Prophetstown. I don't know if I have anything else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel? Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. We'll now move to the application from Dani Tippmann. The first reader is Darren.
Okay. What struck me about this application, it was very strong, very thorough. He thought of everything. What I see is that he's allowing the park visitors to participate in the Miami tribal culture. He's also including the Miami tribe. So I like the fact that he's reaching out to a greater public than some of the other. The only question I have is, they're going to make cattail mats, and I was wondering, will the guests be able to take these home, or do they stay in the park, or will they sell them for maybe to give the money back to the park? That might be an idea. And I was wondering, where he's going to buy his beaver. They're going to have a beaver roast. So just a few questions as far as budget's concerned. Those were the questions. He already has all his dates set and planned with the park, so this looks very feasible. And he's worked with the park before, so I like to see that. I think this was probably one of the strongest apps I've read. And let me go look at his budget one more time. Yes, he says the beaver's going to be donated. Doesn't say where it's coming from. I just thought it was interesting where you would buy one. Yeah, then he's harvesting plants, but he's not harvesting them in the park. I really like that idea. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. The second reader, Erin.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to note that I brought Maurice back in while Darren was speaking, so I apologize, Maurice, for that. But we are on Dani Tippmann's application.
Yeah, that's fine. I caught up.
Thank you. Okay, now our second reader, Erin.
So I had some of the same comments. I'm starting to sound like a broken record on some of these, but I actually really appreciated that this had a very specific targeted audience. That makes for a good application in my opinion. But I also, what really stood out to me was I like that this had, I think I'm trying to phrase this so I stay within the structure of what you mentioned before. I think it's more beneficial to people to have some kind of project with multiple aspects to it. So this one not only discusses Miami traditions in regards to food, but plants, how the plants were utilized. I think it covers a broad variety of topics, and I think it gets people hands-on and involved. And that, to me, made this a really strong application. I don't have a lot of critique. I did share the one I was curious what happens with what are the mats being used for? That would be my only question.
Thank you, Erin. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
Not an opposing, but I will echo those thoughts that from a programmatic standpoint, it's very strong that there are multiple different ways that audiences can participate in the activities, and so they can come back multiple times and experience a new part of the culture each time and have a different experience and a different engaging experience each time they come in.
Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. We'll move to the next application, Daniel Russel. The first reader is Mary Ann.
Yes, I thought this was an interesting concept that he is dressing as Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Park and was going to mention the native trees which were abundant during Lincoln's time. Going around to campsites would be interesting for the campers. And I understand he has done this Lincoln impersonation often, so he is well prepared for that. The feasibility is good on this. Overall, I think this is a good application and would be very interesting for the people in this park.
Thank you, Mary Ann. The second reader, Maurice.
Yes, so one of the things that jumped out at me was the fact that, this does seem to be a one-person production. So there was room, I thought, in the application for greater collaboration. And then also, the target audience seems to be, although folks who are already camping in the park, and there didn't seem to be a plan to reach out to diverse populations outside of this. And then also then beyond the performance itself, the acquisition of knowledge or skills in the arts itself seems a little unclear to me. Like I said, definitely a reach out to underserved communities would definitely add to the project's overall cultural benefit. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Maurice. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
I feel as though I should speak up for this one as well. My biggest criticism of this particular application was that I felt it lacked a little bit of focus. So after reading it, I wasn't 100% sure what the actual activity was, and maybe that's on me, but it was a little more difficult for me to give it a proper score when I wasn't entirely sure what the activity was going to be. It sounded like someone was going to be bringing Lincoln to campgoers, which didn't really seem to include the sort of underserved populations we were talking about, but it also, I just wasn't 100% sure what the focus was. Although I will say I did very much appreciate the inclusion of trying to connect people to plants that have been here for a very long time, to native plants. That's a huge part of what I do as an educator, so that I definitely appreciate.
Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need additional time.
You're doing an excellent job, everyone. Thank you so much.
We'll now move to the next application from David Matlack. The first reader is Aaron.
Apologize, I'm going over my notes here. So I'm a big fan of applications. I like to say give more and get more. So I like people that apply for as much as they can possibly do, and this one seemed to be sort of on the smaller side of what the projects were going to be. There was only one, I think there was only going to be one interaction with the public, only one performance. I believe it was only finalized in November, so I'm not sure if that changes or not. But I would like to see more performances. That would be a big benefit to me. And I did watch, so the applicant uploaded a video to YouTube of a different performance. I think it was, I think that was this one maybe. But I wasn't 100% sure what this performance was necessarily going to involve. I don't think it was finalized until I think the applicant said November 3rd or something like that was when it was revealed to the public. So, but I would like to know more about the specifics of this performance. Is it specifically tied to the fossil walk that's being done prior, the sort of science-oriented walk, or is this something separate? So are the people who are signing up for the fossil hike also signing up for this, or is this just another alternative activity that takes place afterwards? So I guess that was my sort of big concern about this one.
Thank you, Aaron. The second reader, Bethany.
I will echo some of Aaron's thoughts here. I also was a little confused as to the program structure and how it related to the hike, and whether it was one part of a larger program that people were signing up for that was put on through Falls of the Ohio. And so I was very confused as to how that was all going to work out. I thought there was a really solid marketing plan, which I feel only kind of contributed to my confusion as to who the audience actually was, because you've got a lot of places that are going to be reached out to and the word is going to spread really far, but it feels like it was designed mostly for those who are participating in the hike. And so a little bit confused as to that. And this may be as well just because it was confirmed in November, and so not too long ago. But I feel like the focus of the project itself wasn't entirely there. And so obviously there's the connection between the fossils and Falls of the Ohio with all of the fossils. But I would like to see a little bit more as to why Falls of the Ohio is so important for this story to be told. I get the impression from the application that the story is important to the applicant, and I don't feel like the connection to the park is made as strongly as it's made in the personal connection.
Thank you, Bethany. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
I had a couple comments. One, I don't know, I might have missed this, but there seemed like there was a valuable teaching opportunity that may have been missed in terms of they were basically demonstrating, how these fossils, how one should treat their great finds when they do come across these fossils, in terms of how to, respect fossils and respect their placement in the park. And again, I guess I'm sort of echoing the concerns about about engaging the audience. It struck me that the project needs to market to a greater, more varied audience, perhaps reach out to schools more directly, perhaps use social media to reach out to other groups, especially those who do sort of STEAM sort of work. And then again, I guess my last comment just directly echoed previous comments that the storytelling needs to tie directly back to the park or to the fossils, as opposed to just stories that seem really personal to the artists themselves.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification before we move on, and feel free to add more comments if needed, but just wanted to remind us of the criteria around audiences. I don't know that you guys are all going, I don't know that you're going against this direction, but it feels like bordering. So I just want to remind that public benefit community impact is looking for a way that the project will actively engage the audience, that it will address the inclusion of underserved populations, that it will include opportunities to share project activities with the public, that it will enable the public to acquire knowledge or skills in the arts, that there is a specific audience identified, and that there's a marketing plan related to that proposed audience. So you may all be thinking of that already. There's no requirement for a minimum participation. But again, you are still evaluating whether you feel like it meets those criteria or not.
Thank you, Anna, for the clarification. Panelists, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need additional time. We will now move to the application from Debra Levy. The first reader is Maurice. Maurice, you may be muted. I'm looking at Anna to see if I'm not hearing Maurice.
Sorry, I was muted.
And now I can hear you, thank you.
All right, let's see. Arts and, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm once again quickly scanning my notes. Actually,
you're fine.
Let's see. Actually, I consider a pretty strong application. I only had a couple of notes, as it were. And actually, again, it kind of comes down to, I guess what I was thinking in terms of their audience. Again, I thought there was a room to, market and engage the underserved. There didn't seem to be a direct reach out plan for any sort of underserved groups or partnerships working with those sort of groups. And I might have missed whether or not there was actually any social media or any sort of specific marketing, hang on, any sort of specific marketing campaign, but hopefully one of the other commenters can correct me if I'm wrong. Thanks.
Thank you. The second reader, Aiko.
I pretty much agree with everything that Maurice had mentioned. I thought that the application was pretty strong. As far as the marketing, what I've gathered from it, she's pretty much just contacting the school system and to reach out to them to bring in the students for these workshops. That's what I gathered from the application. But it seems like that she's had success with that in the past, so maybe that's all that is needed. I guess the only thing I would mention is that in the budget, she was going to pay extra for some special logo or insignia on the cover of notebooks, and I was just sort of curious on what that was. So, but that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Aiko. Any new additional or opposing comments from the panel? All right, please finalize your scores and update your online comments and let me know if you need more time.
Okay, I am Aiko. I'm going to move you into the waiting room. And I will not forget you out there in the virtual wilderness.
Thank you. We'll now move to the application from Dena El Saffar. The first reader is Bethany.
So I felt this was a really strong application. I really thought its strengths lied in the way it encouraged participants to explore the park in a new way. And I felt there was a really strong connection between the project and the park itself. So I really appreciated that. Again, I would like the audience to be a little bit more defined. I couldn't really tell if the participants this was geared toward were mostly those who were already in the park, or if it was mostly trying to target people from outside the park to come in. I was a little unsure of that. And then I think my biggest comment was really on the evaluation plan. I would like to see a little more thought into what the participants' notes are actually meant to tell the artist about the program and how to improve. They made note that they would collect the notes or take photos of the notes in order to learn how to improve and use that for their data gathering. But I felt like more thought needed to be placed in as to what data that actually would be gathered from that.
Thank you, Bethany. The second reader, Mary Ann.
Yes, I agree with Bethany. It is a strong application. It was an interesting concept, and that nature does provide music to us. And I think planning that as a concert was a good idea. And other than that, pretty good.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel? Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Anna, please bring ACO back into the room, virtual room.
We've got ACO.
All right, we'll now move to the application from Glory June Greiff. The first reader is Darren.
Okay. Yes, she is going to portray Jean Stratton Porter, and what I think is great about this proposal is she is going to visit 2 state parks and 2 state sites. That's especially, you know, as far as the audience, I think she's going to reach a wide audience. I have several notes, so I'll start with those. I'd like to see a more detailed budget. I was wondering what it was going to cost for her overnight stays, and she said she was estimating them, but I would like to see them in the budget anyway. She said she is going to travel between from home to the site, and I can't remember if I saw how many miles is between her house and the 2 sites and 2 parks. And does she have any costume costs? And I also like the fact that she is already working with 2 of the parks and 2 of the state sites now and has picked her dates, and she's going to relate her performances to each park and to each season. And she has some details in the proposal for that. Let me go down to some more notes. I keep saying I'm like to see that she has all her dates planned right now. She's already visited the sites, and she's going to use this money to travel and to perform. Let's see, she had a grant for 2017 that was similar to this proposal, but she says her performances will be different. So I like to see that. Again, with marketing, it looks like she's doesn't have a whole lot of detail in her marketing plan. She was going to, let me go back up. She was going to, I think, work with the parks to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through her plan. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't find her. But I would like to see her actively, I guess, marketing this maybe through her friends, the community, schools. Some of the other applications were already in contact with high schools and junior highs. This might help her in getting some audience into these parks and sites. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Darren. Our second reader, Maurice.
Yeah, actually, I don't have too much more to add. I too thought it was a really strong application, and my chief concern did come down to, again, the recruitment of participants. I know she's partnering with the park a bit. There didn't seem to be much of a plan outside of that. You know, like I said, you know, was room that she could partner with another organization who, you know, was already working with a target audience, you know, to do something a bit more collaborative. And there was, again, no specific plan that I saw to, you know, use social media to engage a target audience. So, but that was pretty much my chief comments. Right, thanks.
Thank you, Maurice. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel? Okay, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. We will now move to the application from Jerald Jascoviak. The first reader is Aaron.
So I had one sort of overarching critique of the application, was that to me, it lacked detail. So I have in my notes that I would have liked a more detailed budget breakdown, and looking at the application again, it would be very helpful and as an evaluator just to have it broken down a little bit more. The same for the marketing plan. I would just like to have seen it broken down some more. I also really appreciate when applicants include sample questions that they're going to put on their evaluations. That really shows me what they're thinking when they're evaluating their program. And the last comment I have is that the application had a lot of suggestions that there's a hope that underserved populations would show up, that they would always be welcome, of course, but there wasn't a plan to actively and purposefully engage them. And that's really all I have.
Thank you, Aaron. The second reader, Aiko.
Aaron mentioned most of the same things I had thought about on this application. One of the things, I mean, I would have liked to have more detail throughout the grant. One of the things, for example, in the project summary, they were talking about costume work and prop creation, but there's not much detail on what kinds of costumes and props that will be made. And also there's a mention about movement on different terrain, and if they're expecting people who might have special needs or elderly with mobility issues, if some of this movement is done like with water or dry and wet sand, how are they taking that into consideration into the workshops? Also more detail in the budget. It seems the marketing seemed really high and the supplies seemed really high for what they were mentioning inside of the application. And so more detail on that would be nice. That's it for me.
Thank you, Aiko. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? Marion, could you provide some verbal comments based on what you had have entered into your comments, your written comments? Marion, are you still there?
Yes, I am. And this
Thank
was,
you. Yeah. For Jerald
Jascoviak.
Yes. Could you provide some verbal feedback?
Yes, I thought it was an interesting concept. I don't know if it would appeal to a large group. Of course, in Northern Indiana, the arts and the drama is very strong. So it probably is a good endeavor to do in the dunes. There's a lot of theater up here.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the panel? Please finalize your scores and update your online comments, so let me know if you need additional time. We'll now move to the application from John Sherman. The first reader is Mary Ann. Marianne, you might be muted, or perhaps I've moved too quickly for us.
Yep, I am muted.
Thank you. Now I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Let me get back to I lost my document, but I guess I'll have to wing it.
Well, we can wait while you pull that up.
Got it.
Good.
So, again, this application had not done any prior contact. It's just talking about what there will be, media releases to the schools and educators, which I would have liked to seen more previous contact already. His program is good that it is participatory and does inspire people of all ages to consider writing poetry. Other than that, I don't think I came up with anything else.
Thank you, Marianne. Our second reader, Darren.
Okay, I'm going to go over my notes. I've notated a very nice program from last year and nice planning for this year, but I have a question. He has materials in his budget. What do they cost, and are there any rental fees for the park? And more notes are, I said I would like to see more detailed budget. How many hours will be spent on marketing? Do the students get any paper or pens to write their poems, and does he supply these, or do they bring them from home? And other than that, I think it's a strong grant, and I'd like to see it work out. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
I'd like to add something. I was just curious on the artist, or the applicant mentioned that they would take his programs out of the park to a location. So I'm not sure if that was something on the side as his own time, or if it was part of the grant to help. I think it was to cover the undeserved populations, but I'm not sure exactly who that was targeting.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Eiko. I will, if he is recommended, based on everything that you know here, I will follow up and make sure that those are still eligible activities since they're taking place, not on a participating site.
Okay.
Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need additional time. We'll now move to the application from Joyce Brinkman. The first reader is Eiko. Hold, I think you're muted.
Hold on, I was just getting everything all pulled up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so Joyce will be conducting lessons in poetry in the form of haiku, with water being the main theme, which I think is a good match for the creeks and the waterfalls in McCormick's Creek. But in general, throughout the entire grant, I thought that it would have been stronger if she provided more details and actually in all of the sections, like since water is a theme to her project, it's like, why is it important to McCormick's Creek? She said it was important to life in general, but I was just wondering, why is this so important to McCormick's Creek? It does have a history, and it would be nice if that was incorporated into the project. And oh, my notes are still more about, I like lots of details. And so in the project expenses, they were also not as detailed as I would have liked. I was concerned with the books. Books seemed like a high expense. There is nothing mentioned in any of the details about books. So the number of books and how much they are, will the participants be able to take them home? Would be nice to be included in there, to know what those were for. And the marketing expense also seemed high. And if there was a little bit more detail on who she's, or what the expenses, the breakdown of the expenses for that, to justify the high expense. And also there's, let me just double check here. I don't believe there was much mentioned about reaching out to undeserved populations. So that was something else that I had noticed. But in general, I think that the project is a good project and goes well with the park. But if there was more details provided on what she's planning, and the information would be helpful.
Thank you, Aiko. The second reader is Bethany.
I agree there. I think it's a great sounding program, but there's a lot of questions as to what the program actually contains and who it's actually for and how it's meant to go. And so this will echo some of the comments a little bit, particularly when it comes to the books and the budget. We don't know if there's pre-registration for this program, what those books are going to be for, if participants are going to get them. We don't really know what is going to happen in either one of those 2-hour programs, other than they will be looking at creating poems. And so I would like more detail to see how that's actually going to go about, and how the project itself will be managed. There's not enough detail. It just kind of makes the impression that the project will be managed, but we don't exactly know how or who's going to be involved. What I did like about it is that there's little impact on park staff as the project is described through this application. And I always appreciate when an applicant makes particular note that the park or historic site staff will not be greatly impacted or required to do a lot of work for the applicant. And I will agree, I think the integration of haiku and nature is well articulated, but I would like to see a little more detail as to how that relates to the park, not just in general.
Thank you, Bethany. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel? Specifically, Aaron, I was wondering if you could provide some feedback on Joyce Brinkman's application.
Yeah, pretty much my feedback was exactly what's been mentioned. I don't really know that I have a whole lot new to add. I did put a couple notes in the application form as we were talking.
Thank you. Okay, panel, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need additional time.
Okay, Bethany, I'm gonna send you to the waiting room.
Thank you, Anna.
All right, we're ready.
We'll now move to the application from Kevin Stonerock. The first reader, Maurice.
Unmuted. Okay. Let's see. So again, we were talking about a visit with the Indiana Territory frontiersman. thought it was a pretty strong application. Again, I think my chief comment, and again, I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but there seems to be a need or a need of more of a plan to identify and target underserved populations. What was there was rather vague. And so by my read, you know, that's pretty much my main comment I had about this application.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. The second reader, Aaron.
Yeah, so I won't be the broken record part two. My comments on this were I felt that the outreach portion of the application was a little bit unfocused. I wasn't 100% sure what they were going for, but I really appreciated the exceptional attention to detail throughout this entire application. I thought that was made it very easy to evaluate. And I really like the sample video provided. So it kind of gives me as a non-artist and a demonstration of what to expect. And that really lets me know if I think this is going to be something that's appropriate for the public. And it also inspires confidence in me that someone can execute a program successfully or not. So I thought that was a good inclusion as well.
Thank you, Aaron. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel? Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time, and Anna will bring Bethany back from the waiting area.
Okay, we're ready.
Thank you. We now move to the application from Debra Jascoviak. First reader, Mary Ann.
Yes, the Chautauqua in the Dunes as a retreat camp style was an interesting concept. Again, in Northwest Indiana, the arts are very strong. And looking at the detail of what they did last year, they did some very interesting things that included different, I don't know how to say it, different types of things. And seeing their income projection, $8,000, but only $3,000 of that was from the IAC. The rest was from participants for their participation in this camp. Again, $2,000 for marketing and signage seemed a little bit high, but shelter rental was within realms, and the workshop supplies are within reason. An interesting concept, and in the dunes, it would be very, very nice Chautauqua with the nature, with the lake and the dunes and the sand and everything that is up there. So strong application, very aggressive and a lot of work. So I think this would be very interesting.
Thank you, Mary Ann. The second reader, Darren.
Well, I'm confused about this grant. Is it a grant for a nonprofit or for an individual? And she says, due to the success of the 2018 program, so they've already presented this last year, we have already begun concepting and planning for 2019, pending approval of this grant. Then it says, based on feedback during last year's grant panel review, we have begun transitioning Chautauqua from a personal arts project to an organizational one. So again, my question is this for an individual or for a nonprofit? Because they're asking for $8,000. I was wondering what part of the budget is for the $3,000 for this grant for this person. So I'm still kind of confused. She said in this grant this year, she says, my role in this project is to provide the overall structure, project management, logistics support, marketing, and evaluation. The project will incorporate artistic and humanities personnel in their disciplines. I also served as one of the teaching artists doing 3 of the art instruction workshops. Next year, I would prefer to only have to do 1 workshop. So I was wondering why she's asking for $3,000 for 1 workshop, and I don't see any of the budget items for the 1 workshop. So I just needed to get all that off my chest. Okay. And they had this Chautauqua in the Dunes last year, and she has included all of the events. They're numerous, and she also included all of the numbers of the audience numbers, and they're all, let me pull it up, they have yoga, singing, poetry, there's a labyrinth, they have photography, sacred stories, what is mental health, drama, dream catchers, park plays. They have a lot, and I agree with Mary Ann, is strong, and I wish I had been there last year. But this year's grant, I'm just confused about where the money's is gonna go specifically for this year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
Yes, I agree with Darren that the funds should be more itemized. How much, what is the $3,000 going for? Where does the $5,000 come from? And so we know which is grant money and which is private money from participants.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
that was pretty well articulated. They clarified in their major activities that they are in the process of becoming a nonprofit, but as that has not happened yet, they submitted as an individual, and that the programming from this grant is designed to build upon last year's success. And in their project expense detail, I feel like they do a pretty good job of detailing that the $3,000 from this grant is going to go towards the development of this overall program and for the instructors and leaders for the different programs. And then the rest of that expense is going to come from participation fees that participants will be paying. And so I will disagree there. I feel like they go into quite a bit of detail as to where that $3,000 is going and why they applied for the artist grant this time.
But why did they combine the $3,000 and the $5,000 in this grant when the grant's only for $3,000? Why is the $2,000 in marketing, $500 web social, $2,000 park fee, $300 park rental, $1,000 art workshop supplies, $3,000 for instructors? Why did they combine it all? I mean, why didn't they just ask for $3,000 and not $8,000?
I felt that that was there to give us more detail, so that on the flip side, we didn't look at it and go, but you don't have any plans to market this. You've not accounted for shelter rentals. You've not accounted for all of these other fees. And so I feel like they over-prepared and presented more details to prevent the potentially being marked lower for not having enough details.
Well, who will get the money? Will Rebecca get the money, or will Chautauqua of the Dunes get the money? Because in our grant, she says, next year I would prefer to only have to do 1 workshop.
I can answer
So is
that.
this $3,000 for 1 workshop? And what workshop is that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that in here?
I can answer part of that question.
Okay.
Since Rebecca is applying as an individual, she would be granted as an individual. The contract should be with her as an individual. Sometimes, and I think actually Bethany, you've described that really well, so I won't hit on it too much, but sometimes it is a strategy that applicants use to give you the full picture of the application, even though, or the project, even though it exceeds what they can request in the grant. So for example, she's providing you that she's showing you that her whole project will cost her $8,000, but $3,000 of it will come from this grant and $5,000 will come from somewhere else. So I understand you still have confusion, and that's that's just a fine line to communicate well, either with enough or too much information. So still some for you to sort out, but hope that's helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need additional time. We will now move to the application from Samuel Bartlett. The first reader is Bethany.
Yeah, so I felt this was another really strong application. I really appreciated the detailed outline, which clearly showed what activities were happening when and how audiences would be expected to engage or would engage with each of the activities. So I really appreciated how detailed and thoroughly thought out that was. I also appreciate that this application has a very clearly defined audience with a very clear marketing plan and evaluation plan to go along with how they are going to reach that audience effectively. I also feel as though this application really demonstrates how this project will enhance the understanding of the park and how the park will contribute to the success of the project. I think the only points of consideration that I had is I would like for the applicant to consider what kind of in-kind support they were going to get from the park, such as the shelter and amphitheater. By providing it for this program, it means that they can't rent it out to potentially earn some revenue there. And so I feel that is some in-kind support that should be recognized. They also mentioned that they would be getting funding from Girls Inc. and Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I would like to see how that plays into the overall scope of the project and how that goes into their expenses.
Thank you, Bethany. The second reader is Aiko.
I agree with everything that Bethany had mentioned. I thought it was a interesting way to learn about the park and its features by using the method he had recommended or that he's proposing. I guess in the marketing, it'd also be nice if you reached out to public libraries or local newspapers, since there's community event calendars and that kind of thing that they could that he could post to help market this project.
Thank you, Aiko. Any new additional or opposing comments from the panel?
This is Darren. I have an additional comment. Under marketing plan, it says press release with appropriate funding acknowledgements will go to Madison Courier, the Madison Visitors Bureau, and then the Girls Inc., Big Brothers Big Sisters, and Indiana Arts Commission. So it looks like he is anticipating sending a press release to the Madison Courier and the Madison Visitors Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments, and let me know if you need additional time.
Okay, Maurice, I'm going to send you to the waiting room for this application. We'll bring it back before we end the meeting.
This application is from Shari Wagner. The first reader is Aaron.
So I thought this was a really solid application. It seemed like it was one clearly done by someone who had written these multiple times before. The only real critique I have of it is that I would have liked, and I've said this several times, a better breakdown of the numbers in the budget. That would help me out a lot. But I really appreciated the variety of workshop offerings. I think that serves to address a wide number of people who are going to show up, maybe draw a bigger crowd. And I really don't have any critiques to this. I wish I had more, but I couldn't come up with a whole lot. So maybe the second reader will contribute more.
Thank you, Aaron. The second reader is Mary Ann.
Yeah, I don't have much more to contribute either. It was well written with detail. sounds like a interesting thing to do. In fact, almost all these applicants make me want to go to the parks and start visiting them. So yes, I agree, well written, and would be an interesting program for the park.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any new, additional, or opposing comments from the panel?
Yes, this is Darren. I have some questions. There's, I was wondering, what is the small fee participants have to pay? And then has she considered paying the fee for them? I think she's talking about the gate entrance. I wasn't sure. And then do the participants bring their own writing materials, or is she going to buy them for them and hand them out? And that wasn't in the budget. And then she talked about sack lunches. I know it's getting really detailed, but is she going to have sack lunches for the kids but not the adults? And then this was not in the budget item either. So that's the only thing I have to say. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Anna has brought Maurice back from the waiting room. This officially concludes the Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites 2019 Individuals #1 Advisory Review Panel. Thank you, panelists, for your time today. Have a good afternoon.